Hello, everybody. Thanks again for tuning in to Real Street TV. Thanks for taking some time out of your day to watch this video. I'm joined by my wonderful guests and siblings, CJ Lee and Liz Mytton. And I want to talk about a subject that the world has been talking about because it's really important. We're talking about Black Lives Matter, but taking a slightly different slant on maybe what you've heard in the past. I use social media every day, like I'm sure you do. And I suppose you see a lot of places where it looks like Black Lives Matter is having a real positive impact on the world. I'm not sure. The question I'm asking is Black Lives Matter making things better? Are we seeing some positive change? Or is the world becoming more and more divided? Liz, I'm going to throw that at you straight away. What do you think?
Black Lives Matter was set up as an organisation to challenge racial discrimination and some of the disproportionate prejudice that Black people face, particularly in the US. So as an organisation, I think its aims are really, really important. But I think this has been a really odd season. I don't know whether it's because of the time that it's come at. So, obviously the movement's been going since 2016 and lots has happened, lots of police shootings, lots of incidents. But I think something about it coming at this time of COVID has kind of added an extra edge to it. I don't know what you think.
So, obviously, I think the Black Lives Matter movement is a really positive thing. I don't think things are getting worse. And I don't think things, when you say things are getting better, are people, is institutional racism being defeated or being overcome on a daily basis? I'd say absolutely no. That is going to take a lot of time, and honestly, if you ask me how do we start to do that, I don't even know kind of where we start. I'd talk about education maybe being the first port of call. But in terms of are things getting worse, I think the vitriol that we're seeing on social media is a reflection that we live in a different time. So I think at any time where there have been big shifts in social justice or inequality, there has been a backlash from people who don't want to change or don't want to hear it or don't want to believe it or don't think it's even necessary.
Yeah.
I think the difference now is that we can see those opinions, we can see that vitriol every single day on social media. So whether it's Twitter or Instagram, you can just see it, and seeing it like that is a lot worse than maybe 20, 30 years ago when I was a kid and we didn't have social media.
Yeah, completely. I just want to tell you guys a quick story. I remember about 12 years ago, I was doing some rap music workshops with my friend Philip, and we were doing an anti-racism workshop, and we were talking to young people about equality, about discrimination, about why they might have negative thoughts. And I can remember in this workshop, we were talking to 15-year-old kids, and they were saying things like, "Oh, all these Eastern Europeans are coming and taking our jobs." And I can remember at the time saying, well, for one, you guys don't have jobs. And where have you got that way of thinking? Because you're only 15. That's obviously passed down from their parents. And, we really felt like we were making a change. But then you fast forward another 12 years, and I see people are commenting on things on social media. And some of these people who are commenting are 17, 18 years old. Now, if you're 17, you were born in 2003. So, you were born and you were 5 years old when we were doing that workshop in 2008, trying to reach out and thinking, this is a generational problem and this will go away. So what do you do today? What differences do we make?
Yeah, I think it has to be education. It really has to be. I was doing some work in a school recently, so I've been doing some training for teachers and educational people based in education around anti-racist practice, and trying to encourage people to move away from this model where we have Black History Month, and that's where they do all their teaching on Black history in that tiny bit of time and then ignore it for the rest of the year as though Black history is something distinct from the rest of history. So I was doing some work on anti-racist practice, and one of the young teachers, who was possibly 24, said that she'd never met a non-white person until she went to university. I think she went to uni when she was 19, and that was her first experience of meeting a non-white person. other than the person, she said, the family who ran the Chinese takeaway in their city. And so she said everything she knew about black people, Asian people, any people of colour, was what she got from TV, what she got from the news. So she had a very skewed image of, she saw black people almost as a different species, And I think that's the issue. You get people in their own communities, even in quite diverse cities like Bradford, but you get whole communities where it's predominantly white or predominantly Asian. So often young people who are disaffected through poverty and that, it's the same old thing that was happening 30 years ago where, it's this rush to blame, blame the newest group of people. It's obviously that's why we're poor. Obviously why we're struggling. It's them who are coming in.
Yeah.
And I think unless you start educating people at school, not how to be nice to different people, it's not about that.
Yeah.
But about the truth. The truth of history, the truth of imperialism, that kind of thing, about colonialism, then we're going to keep hearing this stuff. Yeah, I think something has to start at school. A more honest education system.
Look, I would agree, having worked in schools, having worked in universities and colleges, and, working around people, what Liz was saying about there are people who grow up without knowing people from other races, other communities, other backgrounds. I don't think there's a great deal you can do about that. If you live in a rural background where there aren't very many other races, that's where you live, and that's kind of fine. I think the challenge there is if the only relationship you have with people from other countries is television, well, that's problematic, because that tells me that we're not doing enough in our schools to, allow people to understand the variety of people that contribute positively to our human race. That's problematic in the first instance. It also puts a lot of pressure on the media, the news, on our recreational TV, to make sure that we're portraying all, whether it's black people, Asian people, women, gays, lesbians. It means that we've got to make sure that we're portraying them in the vastness of the reality in which they live. So, yes, there are black people who suffer from poverty. There are black people who are involved in crime, but there are also white people involved in poverty and crime. And it's making sure that, people are getting exposed to those balanced images of people in influence, people in power, people who are exceptional scientists and musicians, and all of these, all of the richness of our different cultures. That has to be delivered in a better way in education and throughout the media.
Yeah, education is key. Just on that, just going back to those three words, Black Lives Matter. I mean, whatever you think about that statement or whatever you think about the organisation, it seems like some people just have a problem saying Black Lives Matter because it's that feeling that, well, don't white lives matter? Don't brown lives matter? So I think that's my thing that I'm trying to get my head around, and also try and get my head around why people don't seem to get that. So how do you explain what Black Lives Matter means when people just have a problem with this statement in itself? Or are we just seeing people just not getting it?
Yeah, I think one of the issues is that some white people don't see themselves as white. They don't see themselves as a colour. They see themselves as a human being, but they see other people as a colour. Yeah. So when people start to say Black Lives Matter, then they start to feel like, oh, well, what about everybody else? I've not picked on you because of your colour. Why are you picking yourself out and elevating yourself? And I think it's because people literally don't recognise discrimination. They don't, like CJ said, they don't recognise racism. They don't recognise institutional racism. So they wonder why there's this thrust and this push towards recognising the value of black lives, because they just assume, I'm not a bad person. Yeah, oh, slavery. It was hundreds of years ago. What is this? What about everybody just being equal? We're all about equality, aren't we? And yeah, obviously we're all about equality, but it's never been in question that white lives are important, and that's how white supremacy works. You know, it's just a given. You know, it's treated as though white is default, and that
Yeah.
everybody else is other. And I think unless people are in relationship with black people, close to black people, care about issues that affect black people, some white people have never taken a moment to think about that.
Yeah.
You know, consciously, they've made an assumption that things are not that bad, are they? You know,
Yeah.
you don't get called native. You know, I think people kind of categorize racism as though it's about being mean to black people or calling black people names.
Yeah.
And they're not really aware of the whole realm of institutional pressures that are made to bear on black lives. So that's why I think people balk at that term Black Lives Matters, and there was that big push towards all lives matter. Well, yeah, they do, but nobody's questioning the value of black lives. So I think sometimes I try and find a really succinct way
Questioning
of
the value of
saying
white
that.
lives.
Huh?
Questioning the value of white lives.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I mean, I've said, I mean that, you know, the killing of George Floyd. I never watched that video. I've never seen it to this day because I couldn't bear watching another video of a black person being killed. And I questioned with my own husband and with other people, you know, if that was a young white guy being killed, would it be shown on TV? I've actually questioned that. So I thought, you know, if a white teenage boy was being suffocated on TV, would it even get shown? But it's so normal to see black bodies being brutalised by the police and in other settings that it's almost normal to show it.
Yeah.
You know, and I've said that to a few people, and they thought, oh yeah, I don't know if I've seen that on telly before, but they've seen quite a few videos of black people. So that's the proof about, you know, do white lives seem to matter more because we wouldn't show. We see pictures of children in Ethiopia starving with their ribs hanging out, but you don't see pictures of white children like that. You wouldn't see it on TV, but it's become normal to see black bodies brutalised and suffering in a way that you would never show. You know, you can't imagine a photographer taking a picture of a white child and it being on the news or even on an advert as though it was normal. So I think it's all those different images. If people can think about that for a second, they'll recognise that black lives and white lives are held in different kind of esteem. You know, but it takes a lot of courage and a lot of honesty to kind of admit that, I think.
Yeah. CJ, just kind of coming towards the end of this, because I suppose if Black Lives Matter sounds offensive to some, so does the phrase white privilege. And, you know, I don't think white privilege is an offensive term, and it's not meant to put white people down or say, you don't get it. It's just talking about something that does exist. Have you had any instances in the past few weeks where you've discussed white privilege or heard conversations about white privilege and tried to discuss that with people?
Not direct conversations. You know, obviously, you know, I'm on social media kind of most days. You know, obviously my wife is white, so we've talked about it. We've talked about what white privilege means, and you know, I know that my wife has gone to work, and between her colleagues, they've talked about it. So, you know, I think that's a really, really positive thing that, you know, groups of people who aren't necessarily affected by, you know, societal, institutional racism are talking about racism, are talking about what that means. And, you know, you know, I was speaking to Mum this week, and she reminded me about a time when I was going to work when I was in my teens. I was on a bus, and the bus got stopped, and two policemen came on and basically grabbed me by each arm and took me into a police car, sat me there for 20-30 minutes while they tried to find out whether I was the same 6'2" slim black guy that had just robbed a shop. Now, anybody who knows me knows that I've never been 6'2". I haven't ever been really described as slim. Now that stuff just doesn't happen to some people, and that, you know, that is white privilege. That, you know, every single day, you know, white privilege is not worrying that you're going to be stopped because you drive a car that looks like you maybe can't afford it. You know, that's happened to me. I know that. So, you know, white privilege is real, and it does take people to take a second look and question some of the things that they take for granted. And it takes that, because when you have white privilege, you actually don't know, you don't feel it, you just live your life, you just do the things that you expect normal people to do.
Yeah.
Not all black people have had the luxury of being able to just go about their daily lives without wondering if the police are going to look at you a certain way, or if you get to the last number of people in a job and you get to the interview, that suddenly your interview goes very quickly, whereas the person before you went a lot longer.
Yeah.
So it does exist. It is difficult. I understand people who say all lives matter. Nobody's saying that all lives don't matter. What we're saying is that this is a particular movement. Like, nobody questions Mother's Day. No one says, well, you know, what about all the other family members, the nephews and the cousins and the nieces? You know, we don't have special days for all of those, but nobody questions that. You know, yeah, we have a Father's Day, but nobody questions that that's not an important thing that we should support and we should get behind. And, you know, the thousands of pounds spent, you know, by people buying cards to celebrate a special day, but yet we say Black Lives Matter, and woo, like literally it blows the lid off. So yeah, we just gotta we've got to keep educating people as to why, you know, we're not saying all lives don't matter. What we're saying is, right now in our societies, there are some major inequalities, and we need to raise the awareness of those inequalities, and we need to challenge why those inequalities persist over years, over generations, over decades.
Yeah, definitely. Guys, this is such an important conversation. I think we've had some of these conversations over the phone anyway, but it's good to share our sibling convos with the rest of the world. It's a conversation that needs to continue. I think my hope is that this movement doesn't die down, and then in 3 months, when the next big thing comes along, we all forget about it, or in a year, we look back and we reminisce about, 2020 was the year when Black Lives Matter kind of came up and then fizzled out again. So we'll just play our part, guys. We'll keep having this conversation and keep doing our thing, and hopefully, you know, our friends, our family members, and everyone attached to them will keep having this conversation as well.